one point for part of our discussion.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of I Can Do This All Day. I'm Dan, the Part-Time Avenger, and with me is Mark, the Resident Jedi.
Hello there. So we're taking a little bit of deviation from our more recent episodes. We are not impressed with many of the advertised Hollywood movies coming out in the month of August, especially Super Pets. Not how I want to see Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. So we've decided to take a little bit of an old school approach to August. We're going to try retro rewind. This may be a one-time thing. This may be something we repeat in many a slow months down the road. But for those of you that have listened a lot, you know that we have a long storied history with feature film consumption, and we have preferences, many preferences. And that's where we're starting today. We decided to start with the 70s, the first really digestible, debatable era of movies. And each one of us picked one to start the day with. And I'm going to defer to my esteemed co-host, who's been dying to talk about the movie that he picked, just to fill us in on what he picked and why he picked it. And then I'll go, and then we'll dig in.
So the movie that I picked is rooted deeply in my childhood and pretty much my upbringing. But my upbringing was all violence and martial arts. And what better movie to pick than the 1972 classic Enter the Dragon? Mark, which one did you pick?
First, I have to address the violence and martial arts. I had no idea that you were such a token. But on a completely different approach to the 70s, I chose my absolute favorite 70s cult classic movie, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the 1975 classic, Tim Curry launched vehicle that I'm excited to talk through today.
So we're going to break the movies down one by one. We're going to start off with Rocky Horror, and let's kind of just start off with like our origin of everything. Mark, since this is your pick, why don't you kind of tell us as to how familiar you were with this movie and kind of your whole origin story with why you picked it.
Okay, so I picked it because I have seen this movie, I would say probably 100 times. Like, I own it. I love the soundtrack. It is absolutely one of my favorite movies. It's one of those, like, if I had to pick movies to be stranded on a desert island with, I'd bring this one. And that may shock people because it is a little macabre and a little weird, but I thought that it represented 70s cult classic movies. I thought it rose to the top. And I want to take a minute to talk about that, about the 70s, because there were a ton of really great cult classic movies. And I made a list. So I'm just going to read the list, and then I'll talk about my origin with Rocky Horror. But you've got Rocky Horror. You've got The Warriors, which is kind of a really creepy, weird cult classic movie. You've got Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. For those of you that don't know, you should know. You've got Eraserhead, Harold and Maude, Up in Smoke, and then just a bunch of these like kind of scary, kind of campy horror movies like Laser Blast and The Giant Spider Invasion, and all these things that would play and now play in theaters at midnight, or in long movie marathons. And Rocky Horror is no different there. I first watched Rocky Horror probably over the summer of, I think, either sophomore to junior or junior to senior year of high school. And I watched it on TV. because some cable station would play it every Saturday at midnight.
We're looking at you, Fox.
No, we're looking at like TBS or the Sci-Fi
Really?
Channel, one of those, that would have an after dark thing. But I found this out later, is there's a reason behind the midnight showings, because they are so amazingly prominent, even in the Chicagoland area. There's a couple different theaters that do midnight showings of Rocky Horror, and you could find them all across the country. And there's audience interaction and props and all this crazy stuff that goes on with it. But I first saw it overnight, and I remember I definitely fell asleep the first time I tried to watch it because I was just staying up all night. And I watched it again the next weekend, and eventually I bought it. Like, I've had this on DVD since I can't remember, and I have the sequel to it too, which is terrible, but also laughable.
Wait. There's a sequel?
There is a sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and yeah, it's called Shock Treatment. It is not good. It's like all the trippy parts of Rocky Horror just stretched really big, and it was written by the same person who wrote it, who also was an actor in it, Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff.
Okay.
It was his fever dream, but it was originally written as a stage play, which, yeah, I just is one of the musicals that actually resonates for me as translated to TV. You see some musicals translated and they're just terrible. This is just amazing. I loved it since the first time I saw it, and it didn't like shock me or throw me off. I was just like, this is really catchy, and I enjoy Tim Curry already. From Clue and all the other things that he was in that I knew about. I was just like, yeah, no problem. Susan Sarandon's great too.
So it's interesting that you say, like, Tim Curry specifically, because where I knew Tim Curry from? Home Alone, was it 1 or 2? I think 2. And that's, I mean, I knew him from a lot of other stuff, obviously from, but one of the things that about Tim Curry is that I was super surprised about his particular role in this movie, which brings me to the reason as to why I was cool with watching this, because I've never seen this movie or seen the play before. I kind of knew of it, but I think I kind of got this and Rocky, or Little Shop of Horrors and something else kind of commingled. So they all kind of were like, oh, they're all part of this type of weird kind of genre of musical type thing.
Don't knock
And
Little Shop of Horrors. That is like number 2 on my favorite movie musical soundtrack list, and my favorite piano bar request song is from that movie. But so you had never seen this. Did you know what you were in for? When I texted you that this was the movie I picked, I specifically told you, do not watch this with your kids.
so I didn't watch it with my kids just because they weren't, I mean, they couldn't even watch Hamilton. So I was perfectly fine watching this by myself. I didn't know everything about this movie. And so the way that you had put it, I was like, well, I mean, how bad could it possibly be? And so it's not bad, but it certainly is shocking, especially if you don't really know what to expect from the movie. And maybe just in my head, I just thought that a lot of movies from the earlier times, in the 70s and even like in the 60s, like, how bad could it possibly be? They made a movie about it, so I don't think it's going to be too shocking. But then I started using my brain after the fact that, like, oh yeah, this kind of makes sense, because it was pretty much anything goes during the 70s and even during the 80s for movies. So I guess I shouldn't have been too surprised at the content. But yeah, first time seeing it was this week. I'd never seen a single clip of it, but I have heard the Let's Do the Time Warp Again song millions of times. And I will be honest with you, I thought it was the most annoying musical song. And it's just because I didn't get it. I didn't really understand what the movie was about. I had no idea what the movie was about. And you know what? I still don't really know what the movie was about. So it's interesting, but I totally understand why they have those midnight showings and there's the audience participation and everything. And it seems like a lot of fun. But uh, with that as a controversial cult classic or musical, I totally dug it in the fact that they were super, forthright with everything, and they weren't trying to have any subtle context or anything. It was like, here it is, it's out there. It might not make a whole lot of sense, but it's out there. You are not going to confuse. You've got a lot of just sexuality just oozing out of every single scene throughout the entire movie. And, it would be interesting to see. I would actually be interested to see the musical play performed just to see what that would be like now. Because I don't know if you can necessarily do that type of performance now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it hasn't lost a step in the years, but maybe it's just my perception of how society is now. I feel like everyone would be a whole lot more sensitive and a whole lot more guarded in the types of content that's being shown for a musical play.
So Fox did a full remake of this and broadcast it on live TV in October of 2015. They did a modern day reimagining of it, but in it was pretty close to what it originally was. They even got Tim Curry to come back. I'm one of those people, like, if it's not the original, I'm good. Like, I would rather watch Tim Curry do it. Tim Curry actually was brought into the movie because this originated as a play in London, and Tim Curry was the lead. The whole cast was around Tim Curry. They added Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon to the cast, but originally Tim Curry owned this role in London, and it was so big that they got a little bit of money to put it on the big screen. It isn't necessarily that it's not playing now, and there have been a lot more plays where you see drag in them.
Oh, right, for sure. But I'm talking
Hedwig,
about
yeah,
that particular. So, like, if the one that they did in 2015 that you said, was it as
same
risque?
songs, same everything.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
and it was on
Maybe I
Fox.
just I thought that productions would kind of tiptoe, at least on the grand stage of like movies or something like that.
I
So
think the casting gave them the ability to just jump into it because they didn't have a straight person playing a transgender person. They had a true transgender person playing the role and owning it. It's this movie's kind of seen as kind of a fuck you to the mainstream about it, right? I mean, that's one of those themes you see a lot in the 70s. It's just like, fuck you, man, I'm doing what I want to do, and this
yeah.
is just how I'm living my life as a sweet transvestite.
So I'm curious as to how, and I'm kind of jumping around like in terms of like the topic and everything. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, there's no way that they could do that now. And I'm really curious if there's anyone who's listening, or if you know of anyone that is trans or anything like that. I would be curious as to if they found that offensive, if that were to be performed today using that type of terminology. Just because, like, I mean, who knows in terms of like what is offensive, what's not offensive nowadays. It seems like everything is. So even though it was normal, and I put that in quotes, perhaps in the 70's, that type of terminology, would that be used today? And what about you, Mark? Would you feel that if you did see that in whether it's a play performance or in the movie performance, having it be redone in 2022, do you think that, number one, it has a place to have that same type of terminology, and number two, maybe I said number one, number two, but the second thing would be like, well, do you feel that it would be offensive and should it be omitted?
So I don't think this movie gets made now without a heavy amount of following in some other medium. just like in the 70s, I don't think this goes right to movie. This was such a popular play that it got made. And I think that vehicle, right, the theater vehicle, definitely moves things along and pushes behind it, because I think that's where more avant-garde art is more accepted, is in a live theatrical area. That's where it can be more artistic. People can be more vulnerable. I mean, there's plays now with entire casts doing it naked. Like there's stuff like that that's out there now. And I think that when you dive into theater, it is much less of a standard, comfortable mental space. Like, oh, I won't see anything that shocks me. You go to the theater to think, to be inspired, to look. I mean, unless you're going to Disney musicals, which, hey, those have a great place for themselves. I'm sure that, Finding Nemo the musical is amazing, and The Lion King's been running forever, right? But I think that there are, theater productions out there that continue to push the envelope, and that's where art originates. That's where so many. I mean, you mentioned Hamilton earlier. That doesn't hit Broadway unless it's hugely successful somewhere else, and bringing in that culture, those two cultures, and putting them together, right? The hip hop culture and presidents, or not presidents, treasurers. So I think that there's a lot that goes together with that, and I think it could happen today, but it would need momentum. It would need a ton of momentum, whether it be TikTok momentum, YouTube momentum, any of those things. It would need a lot of momentum, because you'll notice that there aren't a lot of risky movies, and there aren't a lot of artistic movies out anymore. I mean, that's just the case. There's very few artistic movies, unless it's coming from somewhere like Netflix or Prime. That's probably where this would end up, is with a streaming service, not in an actual theater.
Disney owns those rights, so
I thought that was absolutely hilarious. So Dan and I were looking for places to watch this movie, and when you Google where Rocky Horror Picture Show streams, it streams on Disney Plus, but it doesn't stream on Disney Plus in the US. It streams on Disney Plus in the UK for all of our across the pond listeners. But I think that that's really funny that something like this ended up in that Fox purchase, that who knows what happens to it? Who knows what happens to the rights to it? Like it got put live on TV before Disney purchased it. And does the mouse silence Dr. Frankenfurter?
So they still allow those midnight showings, because like Disney, now that they own a lot of the Fox properties, that was one of the properties that was excluded from being locked in the vaults or not being able to be exhibited in some of those like midnight showings. So to keep in that whole wave of audience participation and things like that, just kind of like that whole tradition, they still allow that. So Disney, well, I kind of, hats off to you. You still want to keep with tradition for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is great for that fandom and for those people that are participating in those midnight showings, which I hear is like a riot. And so I would like to actually attend one of those one day, but I don't know if Florida's ever going to have one of those.
As somebody that has gone to one at the Boulevard in Woodridge, who does it every Saturday. I went on Halloween. It was amazing.
Really? That's cool.
It was amazing. It is everything you wanted. All the props. Like, I did research beforehand. I knew where the audience participation parts were, and they just gave you a bag of props for it. They're like, let's go. Let's have some fun. It was just a good old, it was fun. And it was cool to see that movie, like, bigger than I've ever seen it before, with an actual sound system. Not that the home sound system isn't nice. It was awesome. So let's dig into the cast really quick. It's a small cast. It's a theater size cast, right? We've got 10 total people that you see on the screen. Tim Curry, Dr. Frankenfurter, your thoughts?
Like I said, I didn't know what to expect with this movie, and so when I saw like a few screenshots of the movie and the images as I was like trying to find a place to watch it. And I was like, huh. I mean, they're not going to come like right at you with some of the shocking stuff. Like, nope, they absolutely do come right at you. And so when I was first watching like the first few scenes, I was just like, where's this movie going to go? Because I don't quite understand. And then Tim Curry pops in, and it's like, holy shit. Really fantastic job. I think he really is just flat out eccentric. I don't know if there's any other word to describe it. He is just flat out eccentric. But the way that he portrays that character and the way he exudes his happiness or sadness or sheer lust, I mean, you believe it 1000% that he would probably do this in his everyday life because he is that believable in terms of his character and the way he portrays it on the screen. So Tim Curry, I mean, I loved you in It and Home Alone too as well. But yeah, pretty awesome job with this.
Don't forget Congo.
I never saw Congo.
Oh man, talk about an early 2000s movie you should see. Wonder where that could come in handy. Yeah, no, Tim Curry owns this movie for me, and it is one of the reasons I absolutely love Tim Curry. Also Clue, but like absolutely love Tim Curry in this role. It showed so much talent that this guy has, right? Choreography, singing, all of the ranges of emotion, and just a fearlessness that totally got it for me. I want to diverge into something you said though. At what point did you think this movie was going to go a little off the rails for you? It wasn't the opening and the giant lips, like that wasn't it.
So the opening with the giant lips, the only thing I could think of is like they did a really poor job with the veneers on, I think it was the two bottom lower teeth. And I was thinking like, why wouldn't they just, see that in post and just be like, hey, can we reshoot this and kind of fix the veneers? So that's the only thing that I could see on the screen. And I was like fixated on it, and where it's like, veneers just not in place. But like I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I really don't know what to expect. And you know what? I was really trying to listen in on the lyrics, thinking that there's going to be some type of foreshadowing. And like, you know what? I didn't pick up any of it. I was just like, I still don't know what's going on. And
It was
I
a
read an
science
article,
fiction double feature.
whatever the fuck
That's
that
what's
means.
going on.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely, I guess it had some science fiction in there. It's sure, I guess, but yeah, I was trying to make sense of something that almost doesn't make sense, and so I think I appreciate the movie more. And if I were to watch it again or see a play version of it, I think I would appreciate it more because of the absurdity of the content.
Absurdity is a good phrase for this. Speaking of absurdity, you get the opening with the mouth, right? You get the different kind of jaws, to quote your poster, and then we get into campy as hell Dayton, Ohio, and you get to meet Brad Majors, asshole, and Janet, and you get the whole proposal opening thing. Talk to me about your head here, because when I first saw it, I was like, well, this is kind of dumb.
I thought it was kind of, once again, I'm going from veneers. I have a problem with the veneers. I have a problem with the veneers. I think about veneers. And then I go into, oh, that's Susan Sarandon. And that's Barry Bostwick. And like, huh, okay. Remember him from those 90s commercials? But I was, once again, I was trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. So I was trying to piece it together, like science fiction double feature, this couple, I'm sure something's going to happen with this couple, but I couldn't make sense of it. For me, it was just like, I don't know what I've gotten myself into, but I guess I'll wait till the next scene. I'm sure it will all unveil as to what this must be, some type of beautiful master plan. And that's where I was at in that particular scene.
Yeah, no, they ran into the cause, they ran into the cause, but not the symptom, right? In the next scene, which I absolutely have come to love, the Frankenstein place scene where they're just walking through the rain for no reason, just like
Yeah.
they're not running, they're slowly walking and prancing through the rain singing. Um,
So I have to
keep taking
ask
me
you,
through your experience because I've seen it so many times that I just love it, and I'm really interested in more of just how you've taken it in.
uh, it's I might have to do like another episode of this just because like there was so much for me to kind of digest and understand because I didn't know what I was getting into to begin with. So I think that's a real important part, which I'll also talk about this at the end too, is like you kind of should know some type of backstory or what's going to go on. Because if you don't, you might not appreciate it, or you might be flat out pissed. Like, why the fuck am I watching this?
Are you saying that? Are you saying that you were ambushed into watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
So I wanted to watch this movie because I'd never seen it, and obviously it's such a big thing in the cult classic movie, but also just I think I want to say it's a part of like pop culture because like people know of the Rocky Horror Picture Show even if they haven't seen it. So that's one of the things. Like I feel like I need to watch this because I'm not opposed to it. I don't know why I never watched it. I just knew it was kind of weird and it was not like, it wasn't grenade launchers and M16s where I was like, oh, cool, I want to watch that. So I think that was part of it. So yeah, I was curious, and so I didn't feel ambushed. I completely wanted to watch this. It was just I didn't get it. Those first few scenes, I was like, I don't know if I should read. So there's a few times I kind of rewound and watched the scene again. I was like, all right, I'm trying to make sense of this. 2 + 2 is not 8, so I don't know what's going on here.
So the mansion scene when they get into the mansion and bam, Tim Curry. How many times did you rewind that? Did it either suck you in or just make you say, what?
So that was my WTF moment where I was like, oh, okay, I think I get it now. I think I know what I'm in for the rest of this movie because it's just such an odd scene. And like I said, I was wondering if this was going to be subtle. It was anything but subtle. It was just flat out, like right off the bat. And then my favorite song came on, and I say that facetiously. Let's do the time warp again. Can you please explain to me what that song's about? Because I have no fucking clue.
It's just a jump to the left.
Fuck you.
Yeah,
Fuck you.
no. It's it's in a
Okay, yeah,
alliteration.
perfect explanation. Because I
Yeah,
think
no,
that's
right? Yeah, let's just stumble through it. It's still trying to talk to the sci-fi nature of the movie because eventually, spoiler alert, we find out that they're from another dimension or another
But
planet.
was there
But
a time warp?
I, you don't know. Where did all these people come from?
Get
We
the
don't
fuck-
know.
Oh man.
It's the mystery. But you know what? It's catchy. It's freeing. Let's all have a good time in pelvic thrust all over this mansion. Let's go.
I'm perfectly fine with that. As a matter of fact, I pelvic thrust all around my house for no apparent reason
I'm
whatsoever.
sure your wife hates that shit.
She hates it because my kids are starting to imitate it. So
That's definitely a concern all parents have. All the inappropriate things that you do, your kids start to mimic them. Mine
but I
hasn't
love
gotten
it.
there yet, but I'm terrified too. So we got to the mansion. Let's talk about the cast at the mansion. So you've got Richard O'Brien as Riff Raff, who is already a tortured artist, and he goes into the hunchback stuff, and I'm just okay.
Totally made me
He
think
wrote
of
the whole thing.
right.
All of this is him.
All I could think about for Richard O'Brien was like he should have been in Scary Movie 2. And I'm assuming Scary Movie 2
It
based it
was
off
a
of him.
joke about him.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
Yes. Just use my strong hand. And then Patricia Quinn as Magenta and Columbia as they call her a groupie in the billing. I don't know, Eddie's girlfriend, but played by Nell Campbell. But whereas in the first scene you see these cast members who you are aware of, and you're like, holy shit, is that Susan Sarandon?
Yeah.
Those people went on to notable, like notable next steps in their career. You've got three people who I don't want to discount, right? But I mean, none of them really went on to anything big.
Couldn't tell you who anyone else was in that movie besides Meatloaf, and then of course Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, and Barry Bostwick. That's it.
Yeah, no. Other than Richard O'Brien doing a voice in Phineas and Ferb, yes, that voice. For those of you who know who Phineas and Ferb is, he has not done much. None of them have, other than they were all three in the sequel. The top three build names that we talked about, not in the sequel. These three, they got to do it, and boy, do I wish they didn't.
It was that bad, huh?
I'll have to. I don't even think it's streaming anywhere, but I have it on DVD. It is not good. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious. I was a big fan of them in those roles, but I can't see them anywhere else.
I thought they, that's one of the things where I had to put my appreciation of the arts hat on. And it was one of those things where, like, I've seen plenty of plays and musicals, and so I appreciate the craft. And so I can tell that, there's a lot of effort that's being put into the costumes and the performance. The only thing that you lose, obviously, with the movie is that it's voice dubbed, so they do the voice in post production. So that's where you kind of lose a little bit of the performance, which I think that's why I prefer stage plays and musicals on stage, because of that fact. Because you lose a little bit of that performance, and you see like, that voice doesn't necessarily match with that action that they're doing right there. But yeah, I mean, when you go into that song, everyone's performing, putting on their best performance. It was just one of those things where, like, I had that preconceived notion of, like, I hate this song, I don't get it, I don't understand it, I don't know. Now watching the movie, I have no idea what this plot is about, and I'm trying to connect the dots, and I really shouldn't, because it doesn't fucking matter. So I was like, okay, all right, I don't hate it, but at this particular point in the movie, I'm just like, obviously I'm not in love with it. So I think, at that point in the movie where I'm watching, it's like, I think I rather would have seen this as a play as opposed to the movie.
Okay. And the Meatloaf cameo, who did play this in the theater. Meatloaf was another theater bring along, which launched his career.
Yeah. Meatloaf, I mean, because there's that nostalgia factor there. Like, oh, I know him, just like I know Tim Curry and Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick. There's the, like, oh, cool, I am kind of into it right now because I know that guy. I know him. So I was at least a little bit energized when I saw him performing. And, the guy can perform. I mean, that's like, without a doubt, in his music career, on stage, and obviously in this movie as well, too. The guy performs, and he puts his heart into every single thing that he does. So I was down with it. So that's where I had a little bit of a turn to where it's like, oh, all right, I can get into this because there's some familiarity there, and I'm starting to appreciate the performances of the people that I know. And so it started to turn the tide a little bit for me.
Okay. After Meatloaf is where this movie starts to get interesting.
Interesting is putting it lightly.
I mean, in just 7 days, they can make you a man. and they did.
Peter Hinwood, I would just like to say that dude is fucking ripped and shredded more than shredded wheat. Like it's ridiculous. I was like, where did like, can we just clone him and throw him into a Marvel movie? Because that's like a superhero physique and it's just flat out ridiculous. Yeah, the movie gets a little bit fucking weird there. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I mean, I just find just absurdity, sexuality, and vulgarity just funny in any facet. And so I'm just like, okay, if I had popcorn, I'd be popping it right now, just because of the fact that it's like, okay, well, this is going to be a weird turn, and I want to see where this goes. So yeah, I was like, now I'm like I'm through the roller coaster. I'm like, ooh, it's on the upswing right now. So like I'm having a good time on this ride.
And talk about rides. Peter Hinwood got a lot of rides throughout this section of the film. And I think this is like where part of the messaging of the film comes out. And it's just like, whoever, we'll
Do
figure it out.
whoever, whenever, however. And yeah, so that was one of the things that was very interesting to me. Like, I was actually pretty shocked when it came to Tim Curry's character, Frankenfurter, Dr. Frankenfurter, goes into the separate bedrooms of Janet and Brad. And they're just like, oh, we can't. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. It's like,
and that's exactly what they say in both rooms, which was amazing.
Yeah,
like the joke and just the freedom.
Yeah.
Definitely speaks there. But no, the on spot campiness of the dialogue and Tim Curry making it work. I don't think that dialogue works without Tim Curry.
It definitely was performed to a T. And you know what? To be quite honest with you, I could understand why some parents would not want their teens to watch this movie, because what he says right there in those scenes makes perfect sense. Like, why deny yourself pleasure? Like, just go ahead. If it feels good, just go ahead and do it. And so I could see why they're, like, in the 70s, I would imagine there would be a little bit of like upheaval of like, you're not going to see that with your friends tonight. Like, it's like, yeah,
Is
I
it
totally
bad
understand.
that I was encouraged to watch this movie when I asked what it was?
No, I don't.
At
I
that
think
age,
that's
like,
awesome. I think that's pretty
yeah, no,
awesome
I
because
got told, oh yeah, no, I saw this at a drive-in with a priest once. Yeah, it's interesting. And I got told nothing about it. So then the next conversation the next day was, yeah, huh?
and you automatically like liked it when you first saw it.
I don't know if I liked it the way I like it now. I was just like, what did I just watch? I guess I have to watch it again.
Okay, all right, because that's exactly how I like. I have no idea what the fuck I was watching. Even at the very end, I was like, I don't. I'm trying to like put things together to make a coherent thought as to what this movie was about. So if someone were to ask me about it, I could tell them without a hitch. But no, I still can't do that. I can't. And you know what? If I did explain it to the T as to what actually happened, they'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. Did you actually tell me what actually happened in the movie? And the answer would be yes. And I still wouldn't be able to make sense of it.
It's a love story, Dan. It is a love story.
Science fiction
Everybody
double feature.
getting some love. Everybody's got a double feature.
Yeah.
There's a lot of featuring going on, but for me, it's the soundtrack that just makes me love it now. Like this is a downloaded, saved thing on Spotify for me. It's great. I listened to it this morning because I was excited we were going to talk about this. I was like doing some cleaning in my kitchen and loading the dishwasher before the little guy got up, and my wife came down. She's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're totally podcasting about this later." And she was like, "I'm surprised it took this long."
Funny. Does
So
your wife like it as much as you do?
she went to the midnight showing with me. Yeah. No, she enjoys it. She enjoys it just as much. So I mean, the rest of the movie goes off with, the all of a sudden you meet the professor in a wheelchair who happens to be Eddie's like benefactor, and Eddie's in a coffin
They're eating
randomly.
him.
Great Scott!
I just
There's cannibalism in this movie. Is everything, and
what I didn't understand in that scene is that so Janet runs to Rocky after they find out that they're eating him and Eddie's in the coffin, and then Rocky's just sitting there smiling, like as if did they realize, like, were they filming and did the actor just be like, yeah, nice hug from Susan Sarandon, or was that part of his character in it to where it's like, oh, he's just that simple minded that he's just
oh, he was simple minded for sure, but I mean, it could have been a little bit of both. Let's be honest.
yeah.
Maybe you should rewatch it because I'm sure you could see.
I rewatched the last half of the movie twice because I didn't understand what the fuck was going on. I was like, I must have missed something. Hold on.
Oh
Let me
man,
rewind. And no, I didn't miss anything. I rewound like a few different scenes multiple times. It was like, what? Where? Okay, all right, I guess. Okay, never mind. No, it can't be it. Let me watch it again. It's like, okay, whatever. So yeah, I've seen the movie. I would like to say that I've seen the movie.
I love it. I could not have asked for a better just overall feedback and response from this. I'm excited to continue doing these rewinds just for this reason. So there's two more scenes in the movie that stick out to me, right? There's the everybody is in stockings review at the end, which I agree. I'm like, he dressed them all up like, I don't know what's, he's got control of them. Now that's science fiction because he's got mind control and can make them do the things, and they all admit to the weird shit
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
did, and it's like confession but in stockings.
But they're okay with it. That's another thing too. That
There
like
is a
they
lot of
confess.
acceptance in this movie.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I found very interesting, and I was like, oh wow, okay, that's kind of cool. Even though none of this shit makes sense, none of it makes sense, but I like the fact that it was this doesn't make sense, but it'll still be coherent if that makes sense, which doesn't, but it does. So that's kind of what my whole metaphor for this movie is like, it makes sense, but it doesn't, but it actually does.
And I agree, and it gives closure to Brad and Janet's engagement, to Rocky's life, to all the rest of these characters, and to Frankenfurter. And this, I know it doesn't make a ton of sense, but this has to be one of my favorite death scenes, or assumed death scenes, in any movie, because Tim Curry just goes at it and is just so emotional and crying and why, and then and then they tell him that they're from another planet and they're now doing robot things.
I think I was more upset and sad about Rocky's death. So Rocky, steroided up, just decides to be like, no, fuck it. So that he just starts climbing a tower for no fucking reason, and he's immune to the laser rays, but he's not immune to taking a little bit of a dive into a swimming pool. So I was just like, you know what? That's some bullshit right there. I'm pissed off because if that guy is like some roided out freak that has no problem like and is immune to like lasers coming from a gardening tool, that's what it looked like to me, then you know what? He should not be afraid of water. But
Did he take swim lessons?
it's true. True.
Or did he just get a cramp because of all his muscles?
Yeah. Man, those abs could have just swam for the entire body itself. So
Hey, no, muscular people aren't buoyant, fat people are. Learn from me. So yeah, that's the message on Rocky. Could have eaten some carbs, bud. So I gotta ask, because I'm obviously smitten with this movie and have been for a very long time. Can you do this all day?
I thought that it was a very easy answer, but I don't know. And for that reason alone, I would say that I can't do this movie all day. So here's the thing. I would be totally up for, like I said, I would actually go out and try to see this movie as a play, or this performance as a play. I would watch the movie again at a midnight showing at a theater because I think ambiance and environment is a lot when it comes to this type of movie and how much you can enjoy it or how much you can also not enjoy it as well too. So watching in the privacy of my own home by myself, I might not like it as much, but I might really like what people will have to say at certain parts of the movie if they're throwing fucking hot dogs at the screen, or if they say go buy an umbrella, bitch, something like that. I can totally understand why that would make a movie. And very much like that movie with Tommy Wiseau, I think it's The Room, where people like just chime in like in random parts of the movie and everyone laughs. I think this is one of those movies that would benefit me as a viewer to find it more entertaining, because really it's like the audience that is adding to that ambiance and the overall enjoyment of everything. So because of the fact that I don't know if I would watch the movie, I don't I have to say that I can't do this all day. Not that I hate it. It's not one of those I hate it, I can't do this all day, but yeah, it's
But
just
you
one
would
of those
watch it
things.
again.
Yeah, I would,
Okay.
and I
Okay.
would be, but I would have to be in like one of those midnight showings. It would need to be some theatrics around it,
So you can do
because
this some days.
I can do it some days, but you know what? Like, I'm not gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna pop this movie on, put on some popcorn, and just enjoy. Like, no, I don't think I will, because I don't think I could. I
It's a
think
drinking game movie. It's not a I just want to absorb it movie.
it might be like one of those. I'm so depressed, I might watch this movie by myself. I think that would be like one of those things that
It is a
I might
joyous
do.
film. The soundtrack. Listen to the soundtrack, because it's definitely rock outable too. So I think that's a great thing that we can do for the love of our podcast is find a way to send you um, to a
To a
Rocky
midnight
Horror
showing.
midnight showing. Just by quick Google, it doesn't seem like there's one in the Orlando or Southern Florida area until around November or closer to Halloween. But I think that we need to make this happen because I think there is an epilogue to this tale, and I'm
Could
really
be,
all about it. I'm
maybe,
excited.
maybe. We'll see. But what about you? Give me a little bit more context. I think I know the answer, but Mark,
Oh,
can
I
you do
do,
this
I
all day?
do do this movie all day. I love this movie. Yeah, no, there's a reason I picked it is because I have such an appreciation for it, and it has kind of fallen out of the zeitgeist, not completely, but the number of midnight showings that are going on aren't out there as much. It was one of those things put on hold by COVID, so getting all those cast people back together is another thing. Like I wish I was a strong enough person to do that, but I'm not. I don't have any like performing ability, and I'm not, that get up in front of people thing. I did it once, and I'm good. Uh, um, it's yeah, I love this. I would go to any showing of this movie, for sure. And it's been a minute since I've watched it, but I've definitely put the soundtrack together and like no, I've definitely got like a musicals playlist in my Spotify somewhere, and it is chocked full of Rocky Horror, chocked full.
So,
And it was a good long road trip soundtrack too, back when I used to drive for work.
okay. So I will say, and I want to piggyback off of what I had said earlier, so, because I can't do this all day, is because of the music. So, not that the music and the performances are bad, but because me as a viewer, has nothing to do with the with the movie itself, but me as a viewer, I just really had a hard time having that connection from the art performance to the movie aspect of it to the lyrics to the logistics of everything. So when I have to work that hard to enjoy something, then it's tough. But now that I have a better understanding of it, I know that I could probably enjoy it a little bit more.
No, we've got to send you and your wife to a midnight showing. Did your wife watch this with you at all?
She didn't know, and she doesn't really have an interest in it either.
You got to get her. We're getting her to a midnight showing. We're doing it for sure. For sure, it'll be the first budget we spend from the podcast account is to pay your wife to go. What's her hourly rate? Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you know what? We're going to take a quick hiatus and we're going to do a double feature of the 70s, and we will be back with Enter the Dragon. All right, everyone. So we're back from our hiatus. We are going into our double feature of our retro rewinds. We just got done talking about Rocky Horror, but now Enter the Dragon is up next with the legendary Bruce Lee. And Mark, this is the pick that I had because this was very heavily in my rotation during childhood. And I was a huge, and still am, a very huge Bruce Lee fan and a big fan of the martial arts. And I wanted to know, have you ever seen this movie before watching this for the podcast?
I had never seen this movie. I thought I had, but I guess I'd seen like the Tower of Death or something, the one where he fights Chuck Norris and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was not this movie.
Okay.
I had no idea what this yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know until yesterday, and we have things to talk about, Dan.
Okay.
Many things.
So what are your thoughts on martial arts movies as a whole?
It's not that I'm not a fan of martial arts movies. I like action movies in general. I don't necessarily consider martial arts versus action to be like a whole separate category.
Really?
I think that it's so much in like the modern action movie, there's martial arts in it, right? Like The Matrix and the John Wick movies and basically anything Keanu Reeves does.
Those are the exceptions to the rule, by the way.
Well, those are the ones that I watch. So well, I mean, no, you've got Transporter and all the ones with that grumpy Englishman who will not be named. There's definitely a lot of movies with some martial arts and some fighting in them.
So there is, there's a pretty distinct line between martial arts movies and action movies. Now, action movies may have martial arts in them, but not all action movies do. And so also another thing too is if it has martial arts in it, doesn't necessarily mean it's an action movie. So Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a perfect example. And I'm not sure if that won an Oscar for best movie. I know it
won an Oscar, and it was an action movie, wasn't it?
No.
They were running up poles with swords. How's that not an action movie?
It was not an action movie.
With the Green Destiny, bro. Green Destiny. Shout out to the trivia crew.
Not the case, but so it's interesting that you say that, and I totally understand, and you bring up some good examples as to why an action movie would be a martial arts movie. But you got John Wick, which is heavy with gunplay. You've got almost every Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie had very, very little martial arts in it whatsoever. It was more of like haymakers, looping punches, and everything like that. But there's a few that are, and then there's a few that aren't. But me personally, I feel that there's a very distinct difference between action and martial arts. So this is one of those movies where it is like all martial arts. There's no gunplay in this, unless you count the guys bringing the Red Ryder rifles onto the helicopter at the end of the movie. That's the closest thing to gunplay in the movie.
Yeah, but they point out the fact in the movie that if you just had a gun, this wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, but no guns allowed on the island, man. It's Hans like rules.
This movie is to guns what Seinfeld is to cell phones. There would be no problems.
Keep in mind, too, that with those types of rules, and very much like, I mean, this can go just like with even for Avengers, you know, if Thanos could just use the Infinity Stones anytime that he wanted, no problem. He'd wipe everyone just completely off the planet. But they came up with that rule where he needed to clench his fist in order for the stones to activate. So I don't see this being an issue where it's like the guy doesn't allow guns on his island. Everyone's being shipped in anyways, and security's tight. So I get it. But we go ahead. You see, it looks like you have some
No,
thoughts on
no, I'll ask later, but it's a
that. Okay.
question that I have. There's
All
there's
right.
so
So
many questions about this, but you go.
yeah, so I just want to do a quick overview on the characters, and I want to get your opinions on them, and then we'll kind of talk about like the notable moments of the movie. But Roper, played by John Saxon, the man with a gambling problem. What was your initial thought when you saw him on the golf course in that sharp red turtleneck?
I was like, okay, so they got the token white guy in it. Got it. Seriously, it seemed like some sort of um just stereotyped character. Many characters in this movie seemed very stereotyped to me.
Interesting.
Maybe I just don't have a love for. I don't know. Because then we could move on to the next character you're going to ask me about.
So Jim Kelly is Williams. You're gonna say Token again?
Bro, so token that they played the Shaft music in all of his scenes.
Okay. Bolo as Bolo.
So which one's Bolo?
The bodybuilder. Um,
Oh, the guy from Bloodsport.
yeah.
That's all I was thinking the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's the guy from Bloodsport.
Guy is like not aged. He still kind of looks the same.
No, he
like
has
80s.
not at all. He didn't age from 1975 until whenever Bloodsport came out. He looked better in Bloodsport. I don't know how that's possible. He didn't really have many speaking lines in the
He
film,
never does
did he?
in any movies.
Yeah, no. I imagined him with like a Mike Tyson Asian accent, but very happy. I would like to talk about like I would love to hear his actual voice and it be just totally out of place. But no, I got the backstory with and I don't want to dismiss Saxon and Kelly. I appreciated the fact that they gave a backstory to him and gave them some level of connection. I almost would have liked to seen a war scene where they introduce him, not as I'll bet you $50 on this, $5 here, like I don't know where that stereotype was coming from, and from a token perspective, I'm trying to like I don't know. What, just like, I'm American. I like to bet on things. Let's play golf. Woo, turtleneck. Look at all my Samsonite.
I don't see how that's a stereotype. I don't understand where you're coming from with the stereotype.
I don't know. I think that I didn't. I thought all of the characters were kind of this facsimile of reality characters, right? I thought that it was campy to the campiest level.
So I can appreciate your opinion on that, but you have to remember that a lot of those movies in the 70s was complete exactly token of like, even for they have the whole genre of movies of blaxploitation films called blaxploitation films, Jim Kelly being in some of the martial arts ones. And this is what kicked him off into some of those martial arts movies, which was heralded and applauded by a lot of African Americans in cinema because like, hey, we got a brother now that's kicking ass in movies, which is pretty awesome. So it's one of those double-sided things where blaxploitation is they're being exploited for their particular backgrounds, geographical places where they're from, and things like that. It's just for him though, So I found it very interesting that they kind of, I never viewed it as stereotypes, but just flat out, just how people are viewed in terms of racism. So keep in mind,
Oh, it
one of my
was a
favorite,
racist movie.
yeah.
Not like a blatant rate that what I just said can be viewed in a lot of different ways in our current climate. It definitely was a stereotyped movie in that even some of the dubbing, like my wife asked me if the movie was originally filmed in English because the opening scenes, especially with the Shaolin guy, the hairiest Shaolin monk I've ever seen. Maybe that's just because I'm used to Kung Fu, the legend continues, where everybody's just right, where I'm used to bald Shaolin guys. But in general, like I was like, it's not dubbed, but it is dubbed. But if their mouths aren't moving in different words,
So if you go back and watch like a bunch of 70s movies, a lot of them are like that. There was no, everything was done in post. So they would say their lines in the movie, and then they would have to go back and dub their lines for pretty much everything. And that's how like a lot of Hollywood movies were. So that's one of the things. Now, for some of the Asian actors, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, we're going to get someone else to dub this completely. They're saying the words, but they had, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for Han's character, he was dubbed completely. I don't believe that was his actual voice, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but Shaolin guy, I don't know what his Bruce Lee's master in that. I don't know if that was his actual voice or not. I would venture to say that it wouldn't be because it was more common. So with that being, so to give a little bit background for you and the listeners for this movie, that is the very first co-production of a Hong Kong studio in Hollywood. So there was a lot of apprehension between Bruce Lee and also the Hong Kong side with going into the Hollywood side of like, oh, are they going to be controlling things? And Bruce Lee was actually kind of tentative, and he was nervous to show up on set some of the days because he felt that the movie was being taken in a direction that it shouldn't have been taken.
I have questions about that because I had to dig deeper into this movie because there are certain things that I was just like, what producer was running this movie? And I
Robert
looked at
Klaus,
I looked
Freddie
at the
Weintraub, and Robert Klaus, I believe.
I looked at the list of producers and they all were like all they did was Bruce Lee movies. Like that was their thing. So I thought that was interesting to me. But no, Fred Weintraub and Paul Heller. But all they did was Enter the Dragon and things like they did those movies. They did the Bruce Lee movies. And then not much else that I could find. The one thing that really I thought was ironic and told me a lot about the screenplay was that the screenwriter used for this production was the same guy who wrote Flash Gordon, the 80s Flash Gordon with his hair parted down the middle. So I was like, okay, maybe this was meant to be a little campy. Maybe because there wasn't like a time in the movie where I took it as serious. It was like a Roger Moore Bond movie for me. Almost like a direct copy of a Roger Moore Bond movie to me, including the mirror scene, which I had to Google because Man with the Golden Gun came out the year before that. This came out in 1975. 72. Okay. So it came out before Man with the Golden Gun.
I'm sorry, 1973. Bruce Lee died in 1970. Actually, no, he died in 1973. But 73. It came out because he died before the movie came out.
Yeah, but the mirror scene that was copied in Man with the Golden Gun, a lot of the things that were done in in some of the Bond movies, like Dr. No's Island. Like, oh, this guy's got an island just like Dr. No. I thought it was very like, are they trying to be campy with all of the Bondisms that they're
Wait,
doing?
so that stuff came out before this movie?
So this movie came out, you said 1972 or 73?
73.
Dr. No came out in 1962, which is where you get the private island thing from,
Mhm.
right? With all the people and the stroking of the cat, right? That was or no, stroking of the cat was Blofeld, but that was all in like the Sean Connery Bond movies. Sean Connery was done with Bond movies in the early 70s.
Okay.
Well, he did another one. He came back eventually,
Yeah, he
but
came back when he was
his
like 60.
main run was done in 1967, and in the 70s is when
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore came in, and I thought that Bruce Lee was playing Asian Roger Moore, but instead of a gun, he used martial arts. Like
So
that's the feeling I got from it.
okay. Interesting.
It just seemed like an Asian Bond movie, which there's nothing wrong with that. This is the first one. It's very. I take a look at it, and this is just an outsider's perspective, being the first time I've seen the movie and the first I've done a considerable amount of research on this movie. I look at this as like a 70s Black Panther movie, like what Black Panther meant to the African American community in recently, as their first full on, the whole top down hero seen in that way. That's the way I look at Bruce Lee. He's T'Challa, essentially. So I understand the standing and the piece. I just thought it was campy, and I didn't like that they started out by beating up the fat Asian guy. I was not happy with that.
So it's interesting. So that the fat Asian guy, which he doesn't even look fat in that. He just doesn't look as cut.
Well, you put Bruce Cut Lee, you put constantly chest flesting Bruce Lee in front of anybody, and they're gonna look like a pudgy little bastard. But man, I was like, why is he beating up the fat guy?
So that's Sammo Hung, who's he was in a TV show during the 90s called Martial Law, but he was actually a very well-renowned stuntman. Worked a lot with Jackie Chan, did a few movies with him as well too, but very highly respected, very great with martial arts and stunt work. And yeah, he was, I think that was very early on in his career that he fought, was in that movie to fight Bruce Lee. So it was kind of interesting to show. But that's also another thing too that I thought, and Bruce Lee was very heavy into his whole philosophy of things as well, to where you would expect the bigger guy to win, and maybe you might view him as like, oh, that guy's fat compared to him. Like, well, yeah, Bruce Lee was, I think, maybe 125 pounds, soaking wet at that time. He was physically like a specimen in terms of looks, but obviously his health wasn't exactly in the best spot either. So it's very interesting to have him in comparison to anyone else. And I thought they did a pretty good job with like the camera work and making him still an opposing force just by his aura and his presentation on the screen. But yeah, one of those things about Bruce Lee in all of his workings with movies, but also in his own script writing and treatments and everything, he was very big into philosophy. And I'm assuming the movie that you saw was the regular theatrical cut. Is that correct?
It was the one that is on Apple TV.
Okay.
That I rented from Apple TV.
So there is another version of that movie that came out that was re-released. I think I want to say it was like 25 years after the fact, and it had a few more scenes with Bruce's philosophy injected into the movie because those scenes were originally cut. So it gets a little bit campy at times.
Wait! I think I saw that version because it was the one where he holds his hand up and it hits all by itself. Because that literally somebody in my household laughed out loud at that scene in the timing, thinking this has to be them telling jokes or trying to be
So was he
funny.
talking to his master at the
He
time?
was talking to
Okay,
his
so then you did
master.
watch that. And so like in the Hall of Mirrors as well too, he hears like a voice, like his master's voice.
Yeah, no, you
Okay.
use the Force, Luke.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
That piece.
So
I literally wrote that down. I'm like, is
that's
that
not that
Obi-Wan?
wasn't part of the theatrical release. I get it, and you know I'm a big Bruce Lee fan, so I kind of appreciate him. If I could get more Bruce Lee, I don't care if it's
So hang on. Hang on. You're telling me I watched the special editions, the Star Wars special editions of Enter the Dragon.
You watched, yes, exactly that. If you can see it, oh no, you can't see it.
No, it thinks that's
The
there you go.
special
There you go.
edition.
So I watched with all the extra garbage in it, like Han Solo walking behind Slim Jabba the Hutt. I watched those scenes included, so maybe it was a little extra campy. Maybe that's why my opinion's a little turned. But the whole it's by itself.
The only additions were some of those scenes where it's him talking to his master at the beginning, and then it was that voice coming from the heavens in the Hall of Mirrors, which I thought was kind of cheesy. And I want to say I think that's it. There's only like a few of those.
I have a question about a specific scene. Was the get emotional to do damage scene in the original cut or in the special edition? Because I call it the emotional damage scene.
Get emotional to do damage.
He's something about doing damage is emotional, or I get emotional to do damage. I just in my head all I heard was emotional damage.
So you're talking about when he's teaching the kid?
When he's talking, it was after they found out about the island thing. Yeah, maybe when he's teaching the kid.
Yeah. So that was actually in the theatrical release.
The emotional damage piece, I get it. I love it.
So yeah, that was a part of it. So and that was a big thing for I believe he fought to keep that in the movie because studio execs just wanted that shit out there because they just thought it was like, hey, let's just get to the fights and everything. So he was a pretty deep guy. And actually for what you thought was the movie that you were going to watch, Game of Death, the movie that you probably are aware of when he's in the yellow tracksuit, that is not even really his concept of a movie. So they re-released a 30-minute redo, almost like a reimagining of that movie to his specs as to what he originally planned, which is nothing like what was released in the movie in like 1978 or whatever it was. Because that movie came out like well after his death, and it was like cheeseball horseshit.
I love that movie, by the way.
Well, I used to love
so much more than this one.
I used to love that movie too, and then I realized that like, oh wait, no, I didn't really like it. I liked the last 5 minutes that Bruce Lee was in it, and that was pretty much it.
Okay.
So, but yeah, if you go back and watch that movie, you'll probably think like, oh my god, this movie is the biggest pile of shit ever.
I have it on DVD somewhere. I'll have to watch it.
And they use his actual footage of his funeral in that movie. Like, what the fuck? It's like so crazy. That's his actual funeral.
I haven't watched it in a decade, so I don't remember.
You probably haven't watched it. That's what it is.
I just watched the fight scene parts of it. Okay, maybe I've watched the one that was actually, I don't know. I'll have to check. I'll have to see. But no, there's some things in this movie that just seemed really campy to me. I will give one thing also to Jim Kelly is when they introduce him and you see him running across the street, the high heels that man ran in. Wow.
Platforms, my friend. That guy's got style, man. R.I.P. Jim Kelly. But no, one of the things I wanted to talk about him really quick and the fact that like there was that and you know, this was one of the big things is, you know, for the scene, Williams and racism. So he's just being a normal guy. He's going to the freaking airport walking and he gets pulled over by cops and harassed. And
that scene could be in a movie today.
Yeah.
That could it still resonates. I thought that scene why are you walking? And they'll beat up the cops and took the cop car thing. I was like, okay, this is funny. This
Yeah.
has to, like, this is just over the top. Like, yeah. But no, I agree. I think that I don't think that he was Token in a bad way, right? Token in a disrespectful way. He just had very much. I think you explained it very well with he had an air of blaxploitation where they put the strong 70s funk music behind him. He had a theme song in
Yeah.
this movie.
And that was the thing though too. Like there's a difference between you've got like the token black characters in movies now where they're just in it and it's just like, wow, could you put a little bit more effort into at least making it, you know, somewhat plausible that there's a reason for them to be in this movie. Whereas he is a main character. So think about it. In terms of a Hollywood movie, you've got a Chinese lead, you've got an African American co-starring along with, you know, you got John Saxon in there, but it's primarily like a big Asian cast or minority cast, and it's still like had like a line around the block during its theatrical run, which is
I can
crazy.
think of a movie in the 90s that meets up to that level.
And
Mortal Kombat.
it didn't have lines around the block.
It was super popular the first time it came out.
It was popular.
The first theatrical release of Mortal Kombat made a ton of money.
Let's just put it on the record that Mark just compared Enter the Dragon to Mortal Kombat, which, by the way, I like that movie, but come on, man.
I thought Goro was going to show up in this movie. Dan, I'm not kidding. But look, early in the movie, in my notes, I'm like, is Goro going to be on this island? And then he turned from Shaolin tournament fighter. Wow, that was part of Mortal Kombat. To super spy. But he's a super spy who turned down booze. What's going on here?
The guy has, you know, he's still a Shaolin monk. So that's one of the things is, which I don't even know if Shaolin monks can not drink.
You're supposed to have your head shaved for a Shaolin monk, man.
I don't know. That's not a thing, by the way.
They can drink. Ask David Carradine. Oh, R.I.P.
Oh man. So David Carradine, I won't even talk about him just because that movie was based, or I'm sorry, that show, the concept of it was practically stolen from Bruce Lee. So he was supposed
Mortal Kombat.
Well, yeah, but they did that like knowingly, so they ripped off characters.
But this mirrors scene, I will say, like, if you seen Man with the Golden Gun?
It's been some time.
It's almost a copy. Like, they took it into a Bond movie. I don't know if it was written beforehand or not, but I was like, oh, this is in a Bond movie. This is ripped off. And then I watched it. I was like, it is not ripped off. The in a volcano working in the mountain on the island thing is from Dr. No. The petting the cat is absolutely from a Bond movie. Even the fake hands is from a Bond movie. But the mirrors scene was original, and then the Bond movie stole it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that was like one of the biggest things for that. They were trying to figure out logistically, and so they also did, and I wouldn't say stole it, but they did the same thing in the third John Wick, where they had like
that's
a similar
an homage.
Yeah.
Speaking of homage, do you think Squid Game was an homage to this? In that some of the people early in this movie just got fucking murdered?
I don't know. I never put the two on the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Can't say that I did. No, I don't think so.
Can we dig into the sister thing?
Yeah. So before you go on your thoughts on the sister thing, so I put that as a notable moment because prior to that movie, in that time, I don't think I really saw a female kick ass. And granted, she was fighting off people that were trying to rape her, but she was like straight up schooling and
Oh,
beating the
she
shit out
was.
of those guys.
Yeah, no, there's no comparison to her now, except maybe what's her name,
Michelle Yeoh, yeah,
Michelle
but
Yeoh,
I think
who was
first,
in every martial arts movie there is in this time frame. But she was amazing in that scene. The scene was great. No complaints in the scene. How does he not know his sister died?
well, he was at the temple. I don't know.
It was 3 years ago.
I don't know, man. You just go with it. That's a freaking movie. People, and by the way, too, people aren't always connected to their siblings. I can speak to that from a personal experience as well, too. So it's like, yeah, you could totally not know your siblings and all that stuff. Um, and especially if you're in a Shaolin temple, which is mainly male. I don't think there's any females at the Shaolin Temple. I think it might have changed now, but I would assume that there's some type of cultural context as to why that makes sense. But yeah,
I thought it was the only thing in the plot that lined up to give any character motivation. Oh, well, I guess the gambler guy wanted money. I'm assuming that Jim Kelly wanted money too. Um, but Bruce Lee wanted revenge, which also anger, not emotion. It was counter. He was going to the dark side there
he was cool as a cucumber. He was cool as a cucumber overall.
until he saw the shoe polish scar guy.
So that is O'Hara, played by Bob Wall, also R.I.P. Very well-renowned karate champion, student of Chuck Norris as well too, and the only man to be hit in the balls by Bruce Lee on 3 occasions.
And die from it.
Yeah.
How did they kill your character? I got kicked in the nuts.
I mean, almost the same thing what happened to Bolo when John Saxon
Yeah,
soccer
also,
told him right in the
seriously,
sack.
the way that they kill people in this movie is another reason I thought it was campy as shit. Oh, you got kicked in the nuts. Oh, I just did a dance on your head. Like, what? 2 foot? Like, no. Is he going to do a leg drop next? Are they going to play I'm a Real American in the background? It's like professional wrestling moves he was doing at the end. Like 2 feet jumping, not even like kicking. What is this little stomp out move?
Oh my God. So you're going to make fun of one of the most basically iconic scenes of Bruce Lee cinema by him stomping the dude out who killed his sister. Well, she committed suicide or honorable suicide, if you will. But
the guy that
yeah.
was assaulted by his dad for no reason yet. The guy
by
who
his
had the
dad.
shoe polish scar. The dad gave him the scar.
The dad. Oh, the dad did give the scar, didn't he? No, it wasn't the sister.
No, the dad had the knife and cut the big guy's face, who then had a shoe polish scar later. It looked like shoe polish. I assume you're open with that shoe polish on your face, my man.
I mean,
I wrote a note. Big guy smells like shoe polish.
I don't know about that. I think you're just trying to be funny here for funny's sake. But
no, that looks like shoe polish. But the jump stomp out thing is comical with an 85-pound man.
Well, with that type of force, I don't know.
The force of gravity, like
if you have, it's not the force of, well, I mean, do you really want to get scientific on that? Like, if you were to drop an 85-pound kettlebell on someone from that height too, at a force going downward, they're gonna have at the very least, have their rib cage shattered. The very least.
But he almost didn't he do it like kind of spread legged?
He jumped up and forcefully. It's basically a downward kick. Okay. A downward kick, which with the force of gravity would be more lethal. And by the way, fun fact: on the set of Enter the Dragon, he did a side kick. I don't know if it was the shot that they used in the movie. The scene where where he sidekicked O'Hara, Bob Wall's character, into the crowd. During one of the takes, he kicked him so hard that one of the extras broke their arm as he was coming back. So just to give a little bit of not even credit to Bruce Lee and his martial arts prowess, but yeah, the dude could fucking kick, and just by kicking the shit out of someone, not even at full force, and breaking the stunt double's arm in the background was kind of comical. But
a lot of thing about this movie was comical.
I don't know, man. See, I'm having a tough time being able to discuss this movie with you.
I knew we were getting, as soon as I watched it, I was like, oh man,
I
Dan
think
really likes this movie, and I think it's really bad.
Well, I think that you will see. The thing is, like, there's a difference between when you don't like a movie, you will not give it a chance whatsoever.
I gave it a chance. I watched the whole thing.
No, you didn't. You didn't. You're talking about it right now that you did. And so, like,
I watched the whole
that's
movie.
Fine. That's
I even
fine.
did research.
You did research to make fun of it. That's what
I did research to understand. To understand the Chubb's hand on the villain. How did he lose his hands?
I don't know. Does it matter?
It meant he had a bear claw hand. You don't just cut your hands off and say, I want a bear claw now.
I've watched that movie. I don't even know if it's not even my favorite Bruce Lee movie. I've watched that movie at least 50 times, and I've never thought about, like, I've never been like, oh, I really want to know what happens to his hand. I mean, he kept it on display, but no idea.
Is that what that was? The weird little that was his bones?
That's what he said is a souvenir. So yeah, it's just his hand, which we don't know what happened to it.
He was such a Bond villain, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's certainly Bond-esque. I mean, that's the reason why they had the whole spy, plot kind of into it. But yeah, I mean, what can you do? Like, it's a 70s movie. You want it to be action packed and fun, and playing to all different types of ethnicities and backgrounds. So yeah, I mean, why not make it something that's attractive to those that have seen Bond movies? And Bruce Lee himself was a big fan of the cool American cinema type of thing. Like, that's why you kind of see like his little fighting stance very similar to almost like a boxer, and because he just really liked those types of martial arts, such as boxing, fencing, stuff like that.
He did have the Ali feat.
Yeah, he loved freaking Muhammad Ali. Let's talk about, like, so there's another thing too, like with the boat scene. I want to talk about the boat scene.
Wait, which boat scene? The one with that poor old man on the little paddle boat who looked like he was gonna die?
Yeah. So that's another thing too, is so they, in terms of the cinematography of the movie, they gave it like the realistic shot as to like what Hong Kong is like and what the ghetto is like for an African American, and then also a rich white guy that has a gambling problem that's getting shaken down by gangsters and stuff. Like, yes, is it convenient? Sure. But you know what? Roper is one of the leads, and it's not like it's super focused around him. So I don't need the whole backstory. Williams, I would have liked to know why he went to the island, if he's just fighting for money or something like that, money, glory, whatever it is, or if he just wants to represent his people. I would have liked to know a reason for that. For Roper, I didn't need a reason. He's a gambler and he sucks at it, and he just needs money, and so he's going to go and fight for money. So, but yeah, the boat scene with the bully. So the guy from New Zealand that is just like kicking oranges out of fucking baskets and kicking people down for no reason. What did you think of that character, and what did you think of that?
Where they threw him in a little boat?
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious that Bruce Lee was just like, haha, I put you in a little boat.
Did you
I'm gonna let this kid do this.
Did you expect him to just like kick the shit out of him? Because I know when I first saw the movie, I was like, he's gonna beat the shit out of this guy, no problem. I
don't think so. I thought they'd fight on the island. I felt that he was going to be such a participant and so focused on getting to Han that he was, why risk it early? Just, you can outsmart. Bruce Lee's always played the outsmart character, not just a fight first character. And he went through all the rhetoric about emotion and all that. Like he would, kind of play him a little bit as opposed to that. I thought that was I assumed that that was an in-character move, and I thought it was funny. It also aligned with the trope that they were trying to put him in this calm person who's he's out there spying. Like, he doesn't want to blow his cover. He wants to just like and let not own it. I thought it worked. I thought it was funny. I enjoyed the physics of when they flapped the thing, it broke the tension and the boat would sink down and the guy had to sit in the back. I was like, they really shot that as if it was really happening. Like, I actually appreciated that one scene pretty well.
That was one of the things too, is like I think that even just like those little nuances of, you've got the racism with Williams, you've got the just flat out bullying of people for no fucking reason of it. I like the way that they kind of, obviously Williams beating the shit out of the cops and stealing their car isn't exactly justice. Might be considered street justice, but justified nonetheless for that character. But the bully gets what's coming to him and he's embarrassed. And nothing ever happens with it. It's not like he comes back onto the boat and beats the shit out of everyone. He ends up just going to the island, and then Roper ends up kicking his ass, which is kind of sweet. So just one of those nice things to where it's like those little subtle hints of championing of the underdogs, or kind of championing injustice as well too. That's one of the things that Bruce Lee put in a lot of his movies, and it's a lot of it was very subtle, but this was probably the most overt, for the injustice of some of the minority characters, or even just characters in general that are victims. So one of the other things I want to talk about in terms of just the characters overall, so you have that entire list of people: Roper, Williams, Bolo. Han is the cheesy Bond villain. Okay, I'll give you that. What about Bruce Lee as Lee in Enter the Dragon? What did you think about him and his performance and as a character?
I thought that he was good. He carried the movie. He did the Sean Connery, the lead character, justice. He carried it. He was consistent. He was the most consistent character by far in the film, in my opinion, and the least campy character. I thought that I don't remember Bruce Lee having the accent that he used in this movie.
He never. So that's his real voice. This is the only movie that he's ever done. Well, there might be some like older TV movies, but he's never used his real voice in any of his larger cinematic releases.
What did he use in those? He used
those were all
American
dubbed.
accent?
Those were all English dubbed. Some other white guy that just talked.
Even like the Green Hornet?
Green Hornet was his real voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only nit I can pick on this is I thought that the dubbing, like, he just sounded, it sounded like it was, I mean, I don't know. It sounded almost like a facsimile Asian voice. Like, it sounded like the voice that people like make when they make fun of Asian folks, I mean,
that's his real voice.
I'm not trying to be that guy and say that, like, it just, I remember interviews and things with him where he had a much more, like, a little lower timbre voice, a much more, his accent came through less.
Yeah. Well, another thing too that to keep in mind, that he had been in Hong Kong for quite a few years prior to shooting this movie as well too. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I mean, he always had an accent overall.
Yeah, but it was, I just didn't think it was as pronounced and like, kind of, yeah. But that's it. Yeah. Like minimal overall, like, carried the movie. That did not take away from the performance. It was just something that, like, you had to get used to early, and then you just kind of ignored it.
Did you believe him as like that ass kicker of like? Did you see him as being a badass? Like, would you want to fuck with him?
He's Bruce Lee. He's such a badass that even if his shirt's ripped only a little bit, he's going to take it off and just flex his chest the whole rest of the movie.
How many
Right.
Bruce Lee movies have you seen? Keep in mind, there's only like 4.
Yeah, I've seen a couple, and I remember him in the Green Hornet a bunch.
Okay, just curious. So there's
Kato don't fuck around. Don't fuck around with Kato.
Yeah, Kato was that show, because that show fucking sucked ass. Bruce Lee was like the best part of the Green
Dude, the
Hornet.
crossover with Kato and Batman? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So true story. He did not want to lose to Robin, and so on set, he was kind of trying to be intimidating to Burt Ward. And according to, I can't remember the actor's name, Van Williams, who played the Green Hornet. According to him in an interview, when he was talking to Adam West, Burt Ward was like shitting his pants that Bruce Lee was just going to go off on him and just kick the shit out of him for real on set. So just a funny story about Batman, Robin, and the Green Hornet and Kato. So, but any other thoughts on the movie at all?
I want to talk about the when they really got into Han and the hands thing. I can't let the hands thing go.
Okay.
I can't let I'm Mr. Barehand Man, now I'm gonna kill you go. I can't. It just kills me. I loved the mirror scene, but there was so much inconsistency in it.
In what way?
I kept counting the slashes.
Oh, really? I guess I never really paid too much attention.
The bare hand made 3 slashes.
Oh yeah. No, I didn't know.
4 knife hand also made 3 slashes.
Yeah, but there's 4 blades.
But then later there's 4 slashes, and the slashes on his face changed direction. And that's why I looked up the producers. I'm like, who are these guys? These are not big swinging producers. These are they were Bruce Lee's guys. Like, I love that he got his guys to do his movie, and it was the last movie he ever did, but he got the sway to get it done. This, in my opinion, is an opening salvo to a career that was cut short. It sadly is the close. But if you looked at this film as his first big US movie, and then he got the opportunity to have a 10, 20-year career, think how much better they would have gotten. Look at early Jackie Chan films that were US released. They weren't good. But could you imagine, like, Bruce Lee and Eddie Murphy doing Rush Hour? Like,
yeah.
That's how I view this movie. It's a first attempt at a crossover superstar working with an American crew and and I'm sure behind the scenes there was so much back and forth over control, more of an exec versus his producer group. And I'm sure there was racism that played in it behind the scenes.
Which, by the way, so the only producer was Raymond Chow from Bruce Lee's side. Weintraub and whatever the guy's other name.
I heard there was a bunch of uncredited producers that
possibly
were like his posse.
But Weintraub was not. He was a big Hollywood producer, very much around like the action genre. But yeah, Raymond Chow was the main name. So it's one of the things about that movie is like it was pretty close to what he had in terms of his vision of the movie. But yeah, it was one of those things too, that this was going to be like what's going to kick off his and bridging the gap of not just Hollywood and Hong Kong cinema, but also just like Chinese culture and even to a certain degree, African American culture as well too, just to, because that was a springboard for Jim Kelly to make a whole bunch of kung fu movies. But yeah, and this is by far one of the most successful ventures to date for Hollywood and Hong Kong joint films. But yeah,
now they just ban Hollywood movies there.
What's that?
Now they just ban Hollywood movies there.
Yeah, right. And that's another thing too, is like it's very, I don't think you're ever going to see, some effort like this again. I think there have been a few in the past. You've got a few Jackie Chan movies, but it wasn't as a lot riding on it as to like, oh, this is going to be the big thing for Hong Kong and American cinema.
Yeah. No, and again, I think that I watched it not knowing anything, and I just wanted to go into it dry. And I found it, campy and funny in ways that I don't think it was meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's very a dated movie. It's a very dated movie.
It absolutely is, and that's fine. I think in the end, if you look at it through the context of the first real attempt at that relation, and a star that could have absolutely, if his health hadn't failed him, risen even more, because look at how much he's loved now, right? Still, like, he is not somebody that faded away.
Yeah.
By any means. So I think that, again, like, if you look at it, he could have had a bigger rise than Jackie Chan, because Jackie Chan was more comical than anything else. And Bruce Lee could have been in some really, dramatic roles, and I think he could have pulled it off. I think he was a good actor. Like I said, he carried the role well. I just thought that, there's those few things that stuck out to me that were funny, or that were, inconsistent in the filming and stuff like that. But I look at this as almost like that first shot, that first independent movie, and we overlook so much with some films or some stars' first movies. I mean, look at Star Wars. It's a bunch of stuff we overlook. So again, not shitting on the movie whatsoever. And the fact that they got the Flash Gordon guy to run it, they should have had a better screenwriter. So if it wasn't for people dying from smash balls and the jump up and stay down move, I think that we would have had, a really polished and good movie. But yeah, I hate to beat up movies that you grew up on, man. I do. I have respect for it. It just from the beginning, it was a little much for me, but I got to love it by the end.
So that being said, as we wrap up our retro rewinds, Mark, can you do this movie?
Absolutely.
Enter the Dragon
not.
all day?
Absolutely not. I think that it is something that you could rewatch to talk about, or rewatch to watch, but it just doesn't hit me in that manner, which I think is really funny, because Rocky Horror does, but this doesn't. And it just proves that all genres of movies have different effects on everybody. It sounds like you can do this movie all day.
Funny enough, I cannot do this movie all day. So the reason why I picked this movie is because, as a whole, this is the most critically, well, I don't know if critically acclaimed, but box office successful movie in terms of Bruce Lee, and obviously because it was an American movie, so it was just fucking gigantic. But I cannot do this movie all day. The reasoning as to why is because there's other movies of his that I enjoy a whole lot more, that I've seen a whole lot more. I do like this movie. I just don't think it's his best. And I do believe that from the supporting cast, from John Saxon and Jim Kelly, I really love their characters and what they add. That is something that some of the other Bruce Lee movies do not have, is a stronger supporting character. And so I was really down with that. But overall, great fight scenes, great action. We didn't really talk much about the action overall, but it's one of those things where I enjoy it, but at the same time, I don't consider this to be the best Bruce Lee movie. And there are some flaws. There is, obviously some holes in the script, consistencies, things like that. But I really do like the movie. Just can't do it all day.
That's shocking.
Yeah, you would think that I would pick.
I did. I thought that you would. I thought that in all of our time podcasting, I was so excited to because spoilers for the people that are still listening, that haven't turned this off yet. We gave each other a few options of movies, and I picked this because I'm like, I cannot not let Danny talk about a Bruce Lee movie. It would be a complete disservice. So now to hear that you have, some lack of Aldanus on this is shocking. But it just proves that you don't like anything.
Well, yeah. But, overall, I think when it comes to the movies that we pick and the movies that we watch, Rocky Horror was a movie that I didn't necessarily have the urge to watch, but I wanted to watch it just because I know there's a huge fan base on it. In regards to Enter the Dragon, it's a worldwide base that really loves this movie, and there are people that are even more fanatical about this movie than I am. And you know what? Hats off to you. I enjoy the fact that other people enjoy movies very, very much, and yeah, it's one of the nice things about doing this podcast is getting a chance to revisit, but also in my case for Rocky Horror, get a chance to watch a movie that I've never seen before and just get that different perspective as to, oh, there's other movies out there and there's other types of genres and other tastes and interests that people like, and I'm appreciative to get a little bit of a taste of that.
That's why I loved the idea of the retro rewind and your choice of this movie, because I hadn't seen it. Turns out I thought I saw part, but I've never seen it. And being able to really understand why, or possibly even still question why it's so loved. I can now say that I have entered the dragon and left pretty quickly.
Well, on that note, thanks everyone for tuning in. We will be back next week with another retro rewind, but we will have that as a nice little surprise for you all. But until then, I'm Dan, the Part-Time Avenger. That's Mark, the Resident Jedi.
Like, subscribe, suggest movies for future rewinds. We would love to hear from y'all. Tell us that we know what we're talking about. Tell us that I'm an idiot for not loving and absolutely just worshiping Enter the Dragon. But we appreciate all you that take the time to hang with us through this whole thing, and like, subscribe, tell your friends, share, put it in your Instagram, tweet, do the thing. We'll see y'all next time.